Hey Andrew, how's it going?
How you doing, Paul? Staying warm today?
Yeah, just trying to anyway. Let Sadie out earlier, and she rang the bell to go outside, and she stepped outside, and then immediately turned around and pawed to come back inside. She's like, "Fuck this."
Yeah, my
Um,
Kato,
that
who
that
is, for our listeners, is Sadie's younger brother from a second litter of the same parents. Um, so they're full siblings, based pretty much, just different litter. He goes out these cold weather and just buries himself in the snow, and I basically have to drag him back inside. So
Do you even have any snow up there?
yeah, we have a few inches,
Oh,
and
we
we're gonna
had
get a
diddly down
ton
here.
tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Or Saturday,
Fun.
not tomorrow. Keep thinking it's Friday. I don't
Anyway.
know why.
Oh yeah, Saturday. I saw we had some forecasted. Anyway, yeah. Today's episode topic is Minnesota weather. Brought to you by Why Dad. Nah. Anyway, we got a fun
For all of
topic
you,
today.
yeah.
What?
I was just gonna say, for all of you in warmer climates, you haven't lived till you've gone through a couple Minnesota winters. That shows real grit.
Yeah. I just saw a video. Miles, the You Betcha guy,
Oh yeah.
and he was pitching Minnesota, and he was like, "Yeah, you can't feel your face in the winter." And then they're like, "Oh well, summer at least must be decent." No, triple digits, humid as heck, mosquitoes. Oh, but spring and fall, we don't have a spring. So yeah, there's 2 weeks of fall that like are pretty good
Yeah.
every year. It's like, yeah, that's about sums up the Midwest. But the people are great. Actually, I think that's how he ended his video. But it's got a great personality. Anyway, yeah. So we got a fun episode. It doesn't have to do with weather, and it doesn't have to do with Midwestern personalities, although it's presented by Midwestern personalities. We are going to dig into habits. Habits. But more so than just your generic run of the mill habits, like you want to build habits because habits are good for you, and you want to break bad habits because they're not good for you. No, we're going to dig into it a little bit more and hopefully break down why we really want to leverage them and how we can do so, how we can hack into them or use them to you know design the life that we want to. Andrew, if you're anything like me, you may at least at some point in life, if not recently, been in the whack a mole game of habits where it's like, okay, start. I'm going to work on building like working out
Right.
and then you start working out, you get a good routine going, and then okay, wait, I need to like make sure I'm getting up on time, and then you start working on that, and then you're like, oh shit, I haven't worked out in a couple of days, and then you go back to that, and I don't know if that resonates with you or any of our listeners, but
Oh yeah. No, you start spreading yourself thin because you want to improve yourself completely, and you tire yourself out. Personally, I do because you're trying to work on so many different things, and you don't feel like you're not making progress in any, and so little by little, everything just starts to get put to the side. Yeah, been there, done
yeah,
that.
I think that's a constant struggle, and then I think one of the most depressing elements of it all, I guess, would be is like, okay, a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, it's like different year, same problems,
Right.
tired, unmotivated,
Mm-hmm.
working on yet another focus, hobby, goal. Maybe go at it in fits and bursts, be good for a while, and then slide back to my same old self. And I found myself, especially in that slump after we lost Isla, coming up on 2 years ago, and And I just was like, I'm tired. I don't have energy. I don't have the energy to do what I need to do for my family, for me. And it's like, how the heck can I turn this around?
Right.
And I think what has been a large part of the answer has been learning how to leverage habits. And so for that reason, I'm really excited about this topic today. And hopefully we can make habits seem a little bit less formidable, a little bit more accessible to everybody. And
It's all about the approach. It's like you're saying, make it more accessible or formidable there. We're gonna be sharing like how we approach these things to avoid the whack-a-mole situation and getting through to actually making sure that these habits stick to complete our goals.
yeah, hell yeah. All right. Well, let's dive in. So first up, what is a habit? And more than just like the generic, it's me brushing my teeth every day, or blinking now, or eating a bag of chips in front of the TV. But yeah, sitting down and watching TV at night could be a habit. But let's peel back the onion a little bit farther and dig into why habits are a thing for us humans. And I mean, fact of the matter is, we are habitual creatures. We are creatures of habit. And whether we realize it or not, we're forming habits. And are you familiar at all, Andrew, with like the science behind habits? Sure, yeah, anything.
A little bit, yeah.
What's your interpretation?
Well, the thing about habits is a little different than yours. And you've made that kind of clear throughout.
Okay, we can go down this road. Sure, yeah, yeah. Let's talk about it.
So, for me, and you've heard me say this over and over again, virtues and habits. Like, virtues are habits, and to me, all good habits are virtues. And the opposite, bad habits, vices, things like that, because all a virtue is a habitual disposition to do something, or a vice. But in order to have that disposition, you have to practice it. You have to constantly put the effort in. You have to build that where you get to like where it just becomes ingrained and part of who you are. People say build good habits. I say be virtuous.
Yeah, yeah, and that's all. That's good, and harkens back even to Aristotle talking about being a virtuous man and finding ultimate happiness via that route.
Paraphrasing his ethics there in a good way.
Yeah, no big deal. I've read a couple pages. I'm therefore an Aristotelian scholar. Nah, I'll just decide. Virtue could be just a different way of summing up habits, but then what is a virtue? What is a habit? Like, how do you form them? So, I am no scientist, and I may butcher my rendering of this, but all habits are like neural networks like etched into our brain. So they're behavior patterns that are hardwired into our brains. And repetition matters there, right? Like you mentioned, doing things over and over, practicing, because that will etch it into your brain even further. But so why do these pathways exist in our brains? And I mean, it's just a matter of evolution. It's like habit building, or the existence of habits comes from our species need to conserve energy. So habits are the result of an automation building process developed by our brains to conserve resources so that we can spend resources on other things. So when we understand it physiologically, it, to me at least, it puts it into a whole different light. It's not like, okay, this might not be a good analogy, but it's not trying to cram a square peg into a circle hole of, okay, hey, I want to start getting up at 7 a.m. or whatever the case may be. So like I'm going to force that into happen. It's not the exertion of willpower. It's hacking into your brain and understanding how it works and why it works that way. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But like virtues, all it is and vices, all it is understanding, okay, these are the habits, the courses of action that bring good to me and those around me, and these are the vices or bad habits are the courses of action that don't. And so we need to work methodically to reinforce the good and reroute the bad.
No, that's exactly how, getting into, you've read more and studied more on like that whole aspect of it, but that's basically like where I'm coming from too. It's just different nomenclature to say the same things. I'm not trying to be, like you brought up Aristotle. I am a big Aristotelian, so just makes just the way I think kind of what that route. But then yeah, you do need to break it down into the science of how we operate as a human being and what goes on there and how our own rationality, which uses our brain to build all these things, really functions to like you said, find those hacks. Okay, like life is just better when I'm ordered or cleanly, or if I'm working out, like my body feels better. And so you find a way to build a routine that just makes sense, and you keep building it till it's stuck, because now you're just there without even having to exert that effort to get up early in the morning to go for a 2 mile jog and right after you wake up or things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I 100% agree with that take. It
Yeah.
absolutely applies to everything that I said as like the root for building those good virtues, those good habits. Because life is just better when you're got when you're filling yourself with good and you're building yourself to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can focus, like you said, all that energy on towards like the next thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned something. There's like, you're working out and you feel good. That's, could be considered the reward. And that brings us to, okay, well, what makes up a habit? And we can talk more about this later, but a lot of this material I got from when I read The Power of Habit and Atomic Habits. James Clear and Charles Duhigg. One wrote one and one the other wrote the other. But anyway, there's two approaches to what makes up a habit. So they're very similar, but one is there's the cue, there's the craving, like, so the cue or the trigger, there's the craving, there's the response, and the reward. And then the other is similar, just it doesn't specify craving, it's trigger, reaction, or result, which
Right.
could be positive, or at least it's perceived as positive. So
Mm-hmm.
an example of that for a bad habit could be you sit down, you see 100 emails, you get stressed out. Like, that's the trigger. Reaction is I'm going to go to my pantry and get a bag of chips because then I feel the result good. I feel less bad, less stressed because I'm getting that dopamine hit from those chippy goodnesses just rushing my brain. So, and I'm sure we all understand the elements, the components of a habit, but when we think about it, a lot of what we do as individuals on a daily basis is a habit. And some of it is just it's neither
Yes.
good nor bad. It's just a habit. But our brain is constantly trying to conserve energy.
Right.
And you mentioned reward. Well, these habits are based on are built on a reward based system. Eat cake. Cake tastes good. Cake. Next time I think of cake, I'm going to want to eat it because it tastes good. So the challenge is competing between immediate reward, easy reward, and like long term reward, like feeling good after a hard ass workout, or the long term effects of losing weight or having higher energy levels.
Right. I don't know if you've seen the video. I think it's a Navy admiral like giving a talk at graduation commencement, and he's talking about how important it is that when you wake up, you make your bed. You know, you have that habit of making your bed because why? You're giving yourself purpose already for the day. You've already started the day off on an accomplishment, and now you've kind of cued that craving for this sense of accomplishment for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're going to be driven to tackle harder things because you've already started off the day with a good habit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I work with a life coach. He promotes himself as a dad coach, the Warrior Dad, Jeff Wickersham. He's done a lot of good stuff and has helped me the past several months. But he talks about that, as do many other, as do a lot of coaches out there. But like stacking those wins at the beginning of the day, really like putting your brain in that positive mindset makes a huge difference on how the rest of your day goes. And I was listening to something recently, and it was talking about like the opposite. Oh, it was Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And she was talking about how like when we like our mentality, our culture of scarcity, how we never have enough, right? And how that affects our mentality. So we wake up and we're like, "Oh, I didn't get enough sleep. I'm tired."
Right.
Or I don't have enough time to get ready today, or and if we constantly are thinking of those negative things or like what we don't have enough of or how we could have more. Oh, our house could be bigger, our house could be cleaner, our house could be prettier, we could have a bigger car, could be getting better grades, whatever it is, like that that uses energy,
Right.
saps energy from us, and two, it it's kind of sets the frame for the day. So kind of the other side of the same coin you
Yeah,
mentioned.
there's that's a very, very good point. Like the culture of scarcity that you brought up, how it's sapping yourself. Like once you get into that mindset, it's so hard to break that habit of like oh, I'm not I don't have enough money for this. Like how detrimental it is to have that habit of just thinking like that. I did kind of like a Curcio, so to say, and that was like one of the big points that came up. It was like
A
you're not
Curcio? What's a Curcio?
Curcio, like a little
Oh,
course.
like a little course?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was like a big element that came up. It's like you have to break this habit of living in scarcity. And because you're keeping yourself from accomplishing bigger and better things. Like you're spending so much energy thinking about that when you should be thinking about, for example, like you took finances. Oh, I don't have money for this or for that. And you're spending all your time thinking about that rather than thinking about using the energy to think about, oh, the money's out there. How can I get it?
Mhm.
Or this or whatever I'm trying to do is out there. What's my roadmap to that goal? Like you're kind of cutting yourself off from achieving your goals by having using all that energy to think towards,
Yeah.
because you're stuck in that cycle of bad habits.
Yeah, and I love how you reference that like way of thinking as a habit. It's like a mental habit.
Yeah.
And that like emphasizes how habits aren't just things that we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not okay. I I feel hungry, so I'm going to go eat. It's also the way we think
Right.
or the way we react. Like the way I react with Evie or Sarah, I think a lot of those are like mental habits I
Mm-hmm.
have. Yesterday or something, she asked me, is like, oh hey, did you lock in care for our dogs when did I reach out to you, Andrew, about watching our dogs when baby boy's born? I was like,
Right.
I said I got it. But in my brain, after I waited for a second, I was like, oh wait, I don't even know if I actually if I actually did get it. So it's like the trigger was somebody else, Sarah in this case, mentioning something that had already been mentioned,
Mm.
that and my reaction was reacting rudely, and my result and the result slash reward was feeling vindicated and in control, like when actually I wasn't fully in control, and it was perfectly reasonable request or
Right.
inquiry on her end. And the other result
Mm-hmm.
is, why it feels bad. So, and I see that a lot in her and my interactions. It's just like um, recognizing the triggers, or Evie, it's time to brush Evie's teeth. Evie doesn't want to brush her teeth. She's like moving away. Okay, she doesn't do what I want her to do. That is triggering. I yell at her or tell her, get over here, we're going to brush your teeth. And the result is I feel more in control. And that's
Right.
easy to do as the parent and the adult. But are all of these positive? Are all of these the most effective? Definitely not. And
Right.
definitely not always positive. But just a couple of more examples of how habits aren't just practical
Mm-hmm.
or impractical habits. They can be mental or
Mental, yeah.
emotional.
Yeah. And then you said something earlier too, especially like the reward part. Like you have to start small and celebrate the minor victories. Getting this podcast going this is a big habit. Let's put it into this perspective. And as last year I did like some career coaching and career counseling with a professional career coach, and she was amazing. And so she's been following our development throughout this whole thing. And one thing that she keeps reminding me through our chats that we still have ongoing is, remember, you and Paul need to celebrate these little wins in order to keep yourself going. Like it's absolutely important to do that.
Yeah.
It's gonna, doing something big is gonna get stressful, but if you're giving yourselves time to celebrate those little wins, like it's gonna keep you going to accomplish the big goals. And it's, in every single form of habit or virtue, that's the case. You have to start small, knowing that you have that goal where you want it to take you. And then, let's say, for example, you want to lose 60 pounds, or just a random number, and you celebrate 1 week of going to the gym, and you find an appropriate way to say, hey, I stuck to my promise to myself in building this good habit of living a better lifestyle, a healthier lifestyle. And then we celebrate a month or like of eating clean, and you like, and then now it's okay. I want to lose. Then you're at like, oh, I'm already at 15 pounds gone. You just keep building it up and up and up till you, because you need to like give yourself that chance to claim those small victories in the goal towards winning the ultimate victory.
Yeah.
Wars aren't won in a single battle.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I definitely want to dig more into that, pull some of those strings, which we will be able to do in our final section of this episode. But before we get to that point, let's dig a bit more into, and we've kind of alluded to some of this, but like,
Yeah.
why do we care about habits? And some of it's obvious, but as we mentioned, we're forming habits whether we like to or not, whether we realize it or not. Anytime, your brain recognizes an opportunity to create a habit, it's starting to pave that neural network.
It is.
And so we can and habits can either help us or hinder us, right?
Yeah.
And we can either, it's like my dog Archer. He's a wonderful pup. Has no sense of personal space or anything, and he's constantly underfoot, barges right in, and is a consistent tripping hazard. And that's on me as his owner. Like, he's a dog, he's doing what he does, and I could have leveraged the science of habits, which applies to dogs too.
Yeah.
Action, reward, Pavlovian stuff to get him to do what I want. But I haven't spent the resources on it. But anyway, like, he's a hindrance. He can often be a hindrance. Am I going to let these habits or the lack of building habits be a hindrance to my life and the way I want to live my life? Or am I going to leverage it, and not only is it not going to be a hindrance, but start getting him to go get a beer from the fridge for me, or pull Evie on a sled, like start putting it to good use.
Right.
So that's the choice we have with habits, is we can either just let them get in our way, or we can harness that power, transform our lives.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, for me, that's exciting for me. Like, hopefully it is for y'all listening as well.
Well, you just have to realize that every action that you commit during every waking second of your life is going towards building a good or bad habit, basically.
Yeah, so if you're not thinking about that every single moment, you're screwed. No, I'm kidding.
No, but it's okay. You're at work. Like, how are you working? What's the effort you're putting into your work? Do you already have a habit of just kind of existing in front of your desk, or setting goals, setting timeline, having order and structure to your work life instead of just being there? That type of stuff. Saying it's okay. You're commuting. Do you have good or bad habits in your commute? It's like every second of your life is kind of dictated by some type of habit.
Yeah, which can be overwhelming. Like, it's a lot, right? And how can we keep track of all of that? All the more reason to start leveraging habits. And you mentioned it already. It's like, you're not going to do it in one fell swoop. You're going to do it small, and you're going to do it bit by bit. And we'll get into that in a bit. But all the more reason for us to wisely allocate these limited resources we have. It's like overwhelming just to think about that. It's, okay, we got work, we got school, we got kids, we got hobbies, we got friends, we got family, we got, if you don't have kids, maybe it's dating, maybe it's, like, you name it. we have, personal fitness, we have financial well-being, we have mental health. It's like, it's so many things. How do we keep track of it all? And how do we, okay, well, take a moment. Let's breathe. Take a step back. We have at our behest a limited amount of resources to use each day. And I've heard a number of analogies for that. Like, the one that Sarah's therapist gave her early on is, and I don't know why this is an analogy, but she's just think you have 10 spoons. It's like, okay. And maybe it's because it like sticks in your brain. It's like, and you can give a spoon to getting up out of bed in the morning. You can give a spoon to cleaning the kitchen. You can give a spoon to showering. Like pretty basic stuff, right? But it illustrates the point. But then by the 10th spoon, like by the time you, like maybe you give a spoon to scrolling Facebook and looking or reading a doomsday article. Like by the time you're dropping Evie off at daycare, you've all used all your 10 spoons. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's two ways we can go about this energy bottleneck, right?
Right.
One is, how can we increase the number of spoons? How can we increase the store of energy? And the other is wisely allocating those spoons throughout the day.
Right.
And that's where habits come into play. Let's wisely allocate these resources. Mm-hmm. And you already alluded to it, Andrew, like these habits, it's tools to help us achieve our goals, right?
Exactly.
And who doesn't want more energy, right? More time, or more whatever. Name the resource. We want more.
Exactly.
So to highlight the point of wisely allocating these resources, back when I worked at U.S. Bank, we used Excel to create our daily reports, and we manually exported the data into Excel, and then we had to go through, I don't know what the process, it was probably like a 30-minute process to massage the data into the proper format, just to send it out to the team so that they could then do their review and follow up on items and what have you. Well, it took us 30 minutes until we developed a macro. That's just the automation available in Excel that uses some basic code to do all the same repetitive tasks automatically. And it was done in 5 minutes versus 30 minutes.
Right.
It's like, boom, 25 minutes back in your day, not to mention the mental resources available. That's what habits are. It's learning how to automate these things in our life that will give us back time and give us back mental energy.
That's a great analogy to put it as. Like, our habits are the macros of our daily life. And even they're good or bad alike. So it's a great way to put that, because like basically you are like rewriting the code of a bad habit to turn it into a good habit. Mm-hmm. And to get a more desirable outcome in your life. So yeah, you're allowing yourself to, I hate saying it, but go on autopilot in certain areas so that we can conserve that energy to form good habits in other areas that you're lacking in order to become a better person.
I mean, no, that's exactly what it is. It is autopilot.
I just hate using that word. It gives sometimes gives a weird connotation. Oh, you were just on autopilot or stuff like that.
Yeah, like a negative, like lack of intention. Sure.
Exactly. Whereas like the whole intent of building these habits is, like you said, like there is a positive connotation, intention towards like having good. I mean, you're building a good habit to go on autopilot or just to be better. Like you want to be a generous, nice guy, so you work on being like giving and being nice instead. Trying to see the positive in everybody. So that way you can treat them with more respect instead of guilty of this. Like you meet someone and there's just like that one detail that sticks out. It's like, I don't like this guy because Paul's got a beard. I don't like him.
Yeah,
And
that
it's just
asshole.
like, so it's, but it's like, oh, Paul's a cheer guy. You're focusing on the good in that person because you've already built up that habit to always look for what is good in somebody rather than. So it's just, yeah, it becomes an autopilot type of thing, but for a good reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if we don't want to use autopilot, we can use automation or uh, Google, Google or Alexa routine or whatever, or we could call it a habit.
There we go.
Anyway,
We've
but
completed the circle.
so why do you want a habit? Because they give you habits. Okay, no, but another reason we want to leverage habits is because they give us control over our life. You talk about like autopilot. Autopilot denotes like the negative connotation of that is like indifference. Whereas if we're being intentional about the habits that we're building or the habits that we're rewriting to reiterate what you said, then all of a sudden we're taking charge of these automations. Like these, they could be viruses, it could be malware, or it could be what's the word, like a tumor that's not malignant, benign. They could be benign. Thank you. It's like, so these habits, they could be malignant, they could be benign, but if they're not helping us towards our goals and they're not helping us live the lives that we want to live, then we are being lived. Our lives are being lived by those habits. And I mean, they could have been created at any given point in time. We could have. This might be a bad example, but let's say we're sitting in art class and we're drawing like we used to draw every day, right? And teacher walks by and it's like, you should just stop right now. Like, you've got no future in art. That's like the worst like attempt at art I've ever seen.
They just stick drawing.
Yeah. Like, no, don't even try that. Go read a book. And you're like, oh shit, okay, and then all of a sudden, you're like, okay, I'm not going to draw anymore because
right.
Because I suck at it. And like now every time you see a pencil, you're like, hell no, I'm going to go eat a bag of chips instead. Okay, that example went off the rails.
I mean, that probably would be me, but okay.
But for better or worse, that example highlights, or to a better or lesser degree, that example highlights how sometimes it's external circumstances that influences our habits.
Right.
And if we just let it be that way, then yeah, like our life is getting lived by those habits. But if we're intentional and we're mindful about it, like then all of a sudden we can control our lives, and it's methodical, step by step. And we'll dig in the next section into like how we can do that.
This is perfect because, like you said, we're using that, we're building them to give us control over our lives, so that way we can have that successful autopilot. Like, we're inputting the coordinates that we need, the parameters for like the macros to be run in your Excel spreadsheet, and we are just letting it run its thing. And if something changes, like externally, we can always disengage those and fix the errors in the code, or turn the autopilot off to redirect course to where we need to go, and then stick it back on to continue the journey. And then rerun the macro with the new data inputs and new codes. So it is, they very, very do give us much control over our life. Here we are talking about, it's like we want it to become something automated. This is how we live our life, but and so it kind of seems like you're surrendering the control of your life to that path, but it's you've built it up because this is how you want your life to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you can live that without having to exert all, like we said before, exert all that energy. Like,
Yeah. Another analogy to highlight that point is, let's say our habits, like, which are being formed whether we realize it or not. It's like getting newsletters or marketing emails that we didn't even realize we signed up for. And so it's like, okay, our inbox is flooded with those unwanted emails. Well, instead, like, if we're intentional about what what newsletters and marketing emails we're subscribing to, and being judicious about clearing out the bad ones, then all of a sudden we have a clean inbox. And I mean, that's what it is. Like, let's be intentional about the habits that we're subscribing to, so that we get that clean inbox. So, yeah. How many other analogies can we come up with to highlight this?
so many.
Yeah. But so another awesome thing about habits is they help us stay consistent. We talked about this ever so briefly in our recent episode about grit. But, like, grit doesn't consist of willpower or solely of willpower. So I read a book recently where the author briefly argued that he doesn't believe willpower even exists, which is a topic for another day. But I think that's really interesting. But in order for us to be gritty, in order for us to stick after that goal, that passion over a long period of time, like, we need to build up these habits. Like, there's no way that anybody can get up 100 days in a row and do the same thing over and over and over without building habits. And I mean that both ways. Like, A, if you're doing the same thing over and over, you're going to build a habit. And B, if you're not doing it in a way that builds a habit, it's going to be exhausting and you're going to fall off the train eventually. I don't care who you are. But that's it. So, anyway. What do you think, Andrew? Do you think we painted the picture well enough here?
I think so.
Yeah. So now, at this point, everybody's like just totally on board with rewriting
like,
their lives
are they ever
habit-wise.
gonna stop beating this dead horse?
Move on. Okay, fine. We hear you, dude. We should introduce a peanut gallery. Do some live episodes and
let's
get
have
some
Evie be the
heckling.
peanut gallery.
Oh, you should just call us poopy butts. You're poopy butt. Yeah. Well. Anyway. Okay. Well, speaking of poopy butts, let's move on to Dad Joe. Fun little segment before we move on to before we dig into some practical applications or how we can leverage habit making. You want to go or you want me to go? Okay. Some of these, probably most of these, are ChatGPT. I love ChatGPT for these because it tries so hard and it fails so hard. But I feel like that's kind of the point of Dad Joke, so I'm running with it. Okay, and some of these are habit related because why not? My bad habit is procrastination, and I'm working on it, starting tomorrow.
It's funny you start with that joke because I also have a joke about procrastination. My two bad habits are procrastination and forgetting things. But the good thing is, I don't procrastinate.
Nice. I like that. I used to always run late to things. Now I just walk late instead.
Let's see, what else do I have here? I gotta find one I haven't used yet. After an unsuccessful harvest, why did the farmer decide to try a career in music?
Why?
Because he had a ton of sick beats.
Nice. Okay, this is one that it's just so bad. Not that the other ones are any better, but it's right up my alley. I had a habit of making terrible puns, but I'm undergoing treatment.
You do make bad puns. Johnny Boy would agree.
Hi, my name is Paul, and I have cable.
Those Rob Lowe commercials. Where do pirates get their hooks?
Where?
Secondhand stores.
I have a bad habit of eavesdropping. At least that's what my neighbors keep saying.
What do you call a line of men waiting to get a haircut?
What?
A barbecue.
No. Nice. All right, last one for me. I tried to catch some fog, but I missed.
We need a soundboard too.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about what constitutes a habit, a little bit of the science behind it, why we care, and why we might be remiss to leave the tool set of habits or habit making by the wayside. So now let's jump into what we can do about this. Like how can we apply habits? How do we form? How do we break? And Andrew, you alluded to it earlier in the show, but like you need a drive, you need a purpose. Like you need that.
You absolutely do.
That central. You need goals.
Why would you do anything if you didn't?
Because otherwise,
have that.
Yeah, I mean, because otherwise you're not going. Yeah, you're going to start a habit or building a habit on a whim. But if you don't have that drive, that passion, that long-term goal, right, you're going to give up when the going gets tough.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this prior, like the motivation and discipline part of it. Like purpose gives you the discipline to carry through on building these habits.
Mm-hmm. And what is discipline if not the conglomeration of the habits that helps you achieve those goals? You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
At least an element of it. I think an element of discipline, a little bit of a tangent here, is staying the course.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is trusting yourself to stay focused on that goal, because there's so many, like with this podcast, for example, it's like what is our goal at the end of the day is to become like the best individuals that we can be,
right,
and to help our future generations to do the same.
Yeah. It's the grit.
Hi, Boo.
Oh, Evie's here.
Do you want to say hi to Umbaba? There's Umbaba right there. You see him?
Hey, Evie.
Here, say that again.
Hi, Evie. How are you?
Can you hear him?
It's good to see you today. I love you too.
Toodles. I'll be done in a bit. And okay, have fun. Okay. So you were saying?
Was I saying or was it you saying?
Oh, we were talking about.
Discipline is grit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Reference our previous episode.
So, if you're wondering where to start, if you want to start on this journey, if you haven't already, or maybe you've built some habits and you want to refocus your energies, probably a good place to start would be to build some sort of habit of reflection, of if you have to either identify or reinforce what your drive and purpose in life is.
Right.
Because otherwise I mean, just speaking from experience, if I don't do that, I end up playing whack-a-mole. And this is where I was
Exactly.
going with this podcast, is that is our goal, right? To become the best individuals possible. But then it's like, okay, well, like, how are our social media posts doing? And how many downloads are we getting? Like, when are we going to hit the rankings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, okay, but those things don't matter. And if I change my focus on those things, like, I'm going to waste my energy on that. Like, they don't matter in the grand scheme of our long-term
Right.
goals. And I'm just going to, and I mean, frankly, I did waste a little bit of energy, like, pulling up some of the feeds, like, first couple days after, or like the first week after launch. How are we doing? Like, how are we not doing? And it was a waste of energy. It doesn't change what I have to do. It doesn't change our game plan. Like, we have to stay the course. And it works. That's true for our podcasts, and it's true for life.
Right.
We got to come up with a plan and stick to the plan. We can't adapt, assess, adapt, apply, but only within, like, the system that we develop, which is up to each individual.
Exactly.
But if you're looking for somewhere to start, that's a good place. What helps you, Andrew, when you're looking to either break a habit or build a habit?
Good question. Really, how much, the first thing is, we've talked about that goal. How much of that ties into who I want to be? Like, is this habit actually going to be beneficial for me or not? Because there's billions of good habits out there, but I'm just trying to think of something off the top of my head. Is that really going to help me to be the person I want to be? Like, is it worth spending my effort to build this habit?
Yeah.
You can just kind of going from there. So identifying my weak. So really, yeah, it's identifying where I'm weak, leveraging what I already have built, and making sure they all align towards my goal. And then, you've said this, like, you leverage habits to build habits. Like, I already have the experience, the knowledge, the know-how of consistently performing actions in a certain way to get to that goal. So it's just now applying that with a motivation and discipline to get there. And maybe, as I said earlier, celebrating the small victories. That's, you've talked about this, and you kind of got it in the notes too, like tracking habits, like what's my progress in getting to this? Tie that into celebrating the small victories. Like, that's your way of tracking. Did I get to this point? Did I get to that? Did I get there to where my checkpoint to know that I'm on track to still go where I want to go? So yeah, that's really like where I start from, and kind of like draw it out.
And I like how you approach it. And frankly, it's kind of approaching your life like a business. It's like, these are like the departments of the business.
Right.
Like, which ones are performing well, which ones aren't. Let's put resources and investments in the ones that are, maybe axe the ones that aren't. But it's all about that smart allocation of our daily energy. And you talked about assessing your strengths and the habits that don't help you so much.
Yeah.
And there's two things that strike me about that. One is, let's become aware of our existing habits. Like, the more, just not from a judgmental standpoint, but just start recognizing what you may not have recognized as a habit before.
Yeah.
And over time, you'll, like, to your point, Andrew, okay, I'll recognize that whenever Sarah reminds me of something, I'll lose my shit. I'm exaggerating a bit, but, like, I don't handle it well. And that is going to be a little bit more of a detrimental habit than, I don't know, like, not closing the toilet seat. after using the restroom. Like,
Right.
so that would be a more beneficial. Like that would be higher up in the list to for me to work on for the benefit of. Because why? Because I want my relationship with Sarah to be loving and wholesome and supportive. Why?
Yeah.
Because we're a team and we're working together. Like we love each other
Right.
and we're like working to build a life for the both of us and for our family that is happy and fulfilling and peaceful.
Mm.
So it comes back to reflection.
Something you said too, it's kind of like the business side of things. Like even in my personal life, I mentioned this before too. I do like SWOT analysis, and that's a really good place in habits too. Like SWOT, so strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And your strengths and weaknesses are something that are internal to you, and opportunities and threats are external factors that you have no control over, and you won't have control over them. So you're just analyzing, okay, like obviously strengths and weaknesses are pretty self-explanatory there. What are you good at? Where are you falling? And I already mentioned that's something I look at. But then opportunities and threats. Okay, what externally can I use to leverage myself in building this good habit? And what are like external threats that I'm going to run into or could possibly come up that will hinder me in building these good habits? And how am I going to use what I can control to overcome that which I can't? And then use what I can't control, the good that I have no control of, to overcome.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. The threat element, well, all of that, but especially the threat element of it, because the minute like I hit a bump in the road, for example, Evie was sick the other week. Like all of my routines went out the window. Well, I mean, except for my morning ones before she woke up. But like my productivity went out the window because she was at home and I was out of my normal environment. And like, okay, of course I'm going to pivot and take care of my daughter, but that doesn't mean baby needs to go out with the bathwater. But if I were prepared for, okay, if my routine were to get thrown out the window, like, then this is the bare minimum I'm going to do, or whatever the case may be. But, and then the other thing that comes to mind is, you know, there's those external factors. We can't control those external factors, but we can control how we respond. How, kind of like Viktor Frankl, we've talked about Viktor Frankl before, everything was taken away from him. But they couldn't take away his choice on how to respond. But yeah, going back to what you said about identifying what's going to help you and what's not, I think all of this highlights that we need to identify what is the habit that's going to help us the most.
Right.
Just for example, we sleep a third of our lives, right? Or should. And sleep is crucial. It affects everything. And I heard a statistic recently. I think it was regarding teens. I think they get on average 6 hours of sleep when they need 10 hours of sleep. And that has a downstream effect. And I know, at least for myself, until recently, I was getting maybe 6 hours of sleep too. But when I needed more like 7 to 8 hours of sleep. The average human being needs 7 to 9 hours of sleep. The average adult. And I'm curious, maybe we can get a quick stat here.
Getting the googly going.
Yeah, I wonder what the average...
Yeah, pull it up.
Not really straightforward statistics. But anyway, that was a failed foray into the Googleverse. But point being, you need to sleep. And if like when I wasn't getting enough sleep or good quality sleep, it was affecting the rest of my day. I would wake up
Right.
groggy, I would be cranky, ornery, supplementing with whatever. I would probably be snacking more, which would then again
Mhm.
create sugar crashes. So, okay, that is a high return area to focus on. If I can improve my sleep, I can improve my energy throughout the day. That's
Yeah.
just one example. But depending on each one of us, that could be different. But identify the habit or a handful of habits that's going to get you the most return for what you're like, whether it's the most energy, or
Right.
if you want to work on patience, well, hey, guess what? That usually comes with energy. But you need
Yeah.
to have more energy to be more patient. Whatever it is, focus on that. Because if you're starting at the bottom of the totem pole, like, one, the reward is going to be minimal, and two, some of these big hitters, these big ticket items, they have downstream effects, right? If I'm more patient with my family, everything goes a lot better. My daughter responds better. My wife responds better. We're all happier. As opposed to, okay, I'm going to spend the next 100 days putting the toilet seat down. It's like, okay, yeah, that's great, but not much of a downstream effect. Which brings up another point. Close your toilet seats. No,
You're not wrong.
So,
or are you?
I'm never wrong, okay? But that brings up another point. So, for a long while, I was under the impression that habits, it only took 21 days to build a habit. Which turns out, like, some guy pulled that out of his derriere at one point when he was doing, like, a study, but there was no evidence supporting it. But then it became, like, gospel. But since then, there has been additional studies done that shows that it takes 60 to 90 days to truly build a habit, to truly ingrain a habit. So, one, don't like just go for that 3-week mark and then be like, oh yeah, I'm good, because no, you're going to lose it. More often than not, go longer, 60 days, 70 days, 80 days, 90 days, whatever works for you. It is kind of a person-to-person thing, but another way that we can smartly build habits is stacking habits. So if you take a habit that you already do, let's say, for example, you get up and you brush your teeth, right? Okay, that could be the perfect trigger. We talked about habits having trigger, reaction, reward, or result. That could be the perfect trigger or reminder to do the next thing, like whatever it is. Maybe that's when you want to work out, or maybe that's when you want to journal, or maybe that's when you want to make your bed. But like, stack those habits so that way you're not like at the end of the day and you're like, oh shit, I forgot to work out, or I forgot to do the laundry, or whatever. It's creating those automatic triggers. Like, that's an automation in itself. Is that, or you can use an alarm. I don't know what else.
Don't be afraid to use those types of tools. Not everyone's going to be able to be like my dad, who just automatically wakes up at 5 a.m. every day without an alarm. Because guess what? He had to use an alarm to build that habit till it became just how his body works according to that rhythm. So,
Yeah.
tools are there to be used.
But you know what?
Not.
Yeah, that's actually a really good example, because that our bodies have, like, our circadian rhythm, right?
Yeah.
And based off of our circadian rhythm, like, our bodies will have more or less energy throughout the days. And when we go to bed and get up from bed at different times, inconsistently, or consistently different times, I guess, then, like, we're constantly throwing our body out of whack. But it doesn't matter when you get up, but if you go to bed, when you go to bed or when you get up, but if you go to bed and get up at the same time consistently, that helps your body develop a regular circadian rhythm, and then you can leverage the higher energy that results from it throughout the day. So, and then like your body will recognize, to your point, oh, hey, like time to wake up because this is when I wake up. So,
I think using like bodily functions in general is like a great way to illustrate these points. Having a set schedule of meals and sleep and breaks and exercise. Just you're stacking all of those normal human functions to leverage yourself into a better you.
yeah, absolutely. You talked about tracking habits. That could look different for each of us. But for me, it's a crucial element because one, how do you know if you're successful or not, right? Two, that helps reinforce that neural network in your brain. Okay, like this is the thing I do.
Yeah, it's just staying conscious of it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, there are apps out there, a ton of apps. There's one I really like on the iPhone. I think it's just called Habit, actually. But that it's super friendly to use. At a certain point, when we get, I'm trying to see what it is because we're not getting show links up regularly yet. We need to get better at there. Okay, so that's not helpful. It's like I pulled up the link and it just shows ID 14383. Okay. Okay. Well, send me a message if you want to know what that app is, or you can just use paper. You know, I'm pretty sure one of my sisters just has a paper thing, and that she fills every day for each month. But to your point about just being aware, oh yeah, spreadsheet, Excel, yeah, whatever works for you. You're talking about being aware, like that is so huge, such an underutilized mechanism for us to build or break habits. Because one is, okay, so what builds a habit? A large part of it is that reward factor.
Right.
It reinforces the habit or cues the habit. Well, like I read this example recently. You take a bite of cake, it tastes good. So going forward, you want cake. But not all cakes are the same, right? At a certain point, you find yourself eating cake, and you don't even realize what it tastes like because you're in autopilot.
Right.
And if you take a second to think about it, you might realize, oh, this tastes like garbage, or you think about how it's making you feel, like, oh, I feel like it tasted good going down, but immediately after I just crashed and I became cranky and whatever the case may be. So as soon as you think about that, you realize that the perceived reward is actually not so rewarding, and that you become disenchanted with it.
Yes.
Or on the flip side, if you're reflecting on the benefit that you're getting from it, oh dang, I've gotten up at the same time. Like I've gotten a solid 8 hours of sleep for a week, and I'm feeling more energized throughout the day. You're like, okay, good. Like you're reinforcing for your brain that it's a positive thing to do, even though it's hard in the moment.
Yes.
So, and you mentioned earlier in the episode, stacking the wins, because once you build that win mentality, so start off small. That's another trick. If you want to build a habit of going on a walk every day, first step, build the trigger. Okay, I finish eating lunch, I go on a walk, and then don't try to go on a 5-mile walk every day. Just be like, I'm going to go Like right now, my goal is like I'm just going to walk for 10 minutes.
Yep.
And oftentimes it ends up being like closer to 20 or longer. Today is a mile and a half.
But something
Like, but the
concrete,
goal
that's
is
a
no matter
goal.
what, I'm going to get up. Yeah. Start off small. Start small, and then build the momentum. Build the momentum, and build from there. Reflect, visualize, contingency plans. We talked about. Let's say, oh, I'm going to be out of town this week, so it's going to be harder to go on a walk. Okay, then I need to go on a walk. Like first thing before activities start for the day, or whatever the case
Or
may
like
be.
in the example you used earlier too, that all dads can relate to. Kids homesick, like how you gonna continue with your plans when that happens? Finding a way to like with the walk thing, if you can. Obviously, there's super circumstances that don't allow you to accomplish everything, but not letting yourself be defeated by that and recognizing, okay, that could be part of one of the ways of dealing with it. It's like, okay, in your case, Evie's sick. I'm not going to be able to go for a walk because I obviously can't leave her home alone. But leaving a toddler home alone while I go out for a walk. But it's like, oh, I failed. No, you really didn't. But you have to recognize it didn't happen. It's not an excuse to just stop this, because that would be, in my analysis, a threat.
Yeah.
So
and that's a really good point. Failure is going to happen. It's part of being a human. It's part of the process, right? So one example, one tip I've heard that's really helpful. Okay. Don't miss more than 2 days in a row. If you miss a day, get back at it the next day. And sure as heck, don't let it go more than 3 days. Or
that's what I was getting at. It's like not letting defeat claim you, but using one instance of failure not to admit defeat, but as a reinforcement of how much more you need to do this the next day.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a great chance to be like, okay, hey, like I missed it. That happened. These things happen. But like, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want more energy. I want to be healthier. I want to live longer. I want to lose weight. Like whatever it is. I want to have more mental acuity for my day ahead. That's a great point. And I mean, frankly, every time you bounce back, you're building a habit of bouncing back, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're going to veer off the road here and there, but if you get back on the road, consistently, what?
Nothing. Just veering off the road example in your hand motions. It's like when you
I nearly fell out of my chair.
It's that, and it's just like you veer off the road. Like I live in the country, so it's like you're gonna hit like trees and die.
Yeah. I was envisioning an open country road
don't
with
work like the same.
Okay, well,
but
imagine
point is valid.
As many lanes of shoulder as you have lanes to drive on. Okay, well, yeah, don't crash into trees. Don't die. But point is, get back onto the path. Get back to it. You're building the habit of getting back to it. And the more you do it, the less time it will take each time, right?
Exactly.
So, anyway, hopefully some of these are found helpful. If you want to learn more about the science of habits or how you can leverage habits in your life, again, The Power of Habit or Atomic Habits are great books. I actually just read, or I'm close to finishing another book. It's called Unwinding Anxiety. Ooh. And it actually approaches dealing with anxiety as a habit. And I was talking to somebody about that recently. Yeah. I was talking to somebody about that recently, and they were like, they didn't like that idea at first because they thought it was like, oh, well, if it's habit, then it's something I've chosen to do. Well, no, because as we talked about earlier, like our habits, they're not something wrong with us. Like habits are like how we all operate universally as human beings,
Right.
and they're not also necessarily things that we specifically chose,
Right.
right? But yeah, so this author, a psychiatrist, addresses anxiety as a habit, and he talks about a lot of the same stuff and how you can hack your brain
Mm-hmm.
over time, like using mindfulness and awareness, non-judgmental awareness, finding replacing your bad habits with a bigger, better offer, right?
Right. Right.
You can't just stop doing something. You have to replace it. You have to redirect
Exactly.
it.
No, that's a tangent on that point. One of my friends suffers from terrible anxiety, and he went through a program. That's basically what it came down to. And he said for him, it was like eye-opening. It's like I can change. Like I have power over this because I can break this mental cycle and
It's empowering. Yeah.
put in a good and rebuild it to be a better cycle. So yeah, that's why I said I
Yeah.
agree with that point. Like building a habit, and you said like habits just aren't like external actions. Like it's a mental thing too, and so
Mm-hmm.
we can change who we are on a very uh, comprehensive, all-encompassing point by focusing on building good habits.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say before we wrap up here is especially like growing up and in my young adulthood, I dealt a lot with like guilt when I would frame it as quote unquote Catholic guilt. But it was just guilt in general. Oh, like I didn't do this, I didn't do that. I set out to I didn't want to eat snacks in between meals this week and then I did it 20 times and it's like, okay, well, that mindset, that approach, that beating myself up was wasting energy.
Yeah.
Whereas the alternative is just observing like a third party. You're like, okay, well, like why did I go eat why did I go grab that bag of chips then? It's like, well, I was bored. I was stressed. I was worried. I was avoiding responding to an email. And so just observing or like how did I feel? I felt like initially good, but then I felt like crap after. One, because I failed my commitment, and two, because I had a bloated gut on, and then I had a energy crash.
Yeah.
And so just start observing, and even if it's like not a habit you're focusing on, but you're observing, you're slowly like one, you're not spending energy on that negative judgment of self. And two, you're like slowly but surely reinforcing the rewards or lack of rewards, and some of those habits will start changing automatically.
Yeah.
So that would be my last recommendation, is just to cut yourself some slack. But by that I don't mean, oh yeah, it's like we all got habits and there's nothing I can do about it. I was like, no, like you're
Right.
working towards your goals. You have your number 1, 2, or 3 habits, whatever it is that you're focusing on, and then the rest of them, you're like, okay, hey, this isn't my top priority. I'm acknowledging it. Maybe I'll add it
Right.
to a list if I need to, and I'll come back to it when it's appropriate. But in the meantime,
Exactly.
this is what I recognize about myself. All right, now is the part of the show where we all cry because we have to wrap it up.
Yes.
Sad.
Fortunately, we could talk for days on this. Honestly.
Yeah. For better or for worse. But yeah. So hopefully you all enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. We dug into habits, how they're innate byproducts of our human physiology,
Right.
how they apply to us as individuals. We didn't talk too much today about, like, we didn't have too many dad examples or kid examples or anything, but like we're like, how do we become better parents and how do we raise our children better? Well, by being better individuals, right?
Exactly. You got to focus on the individual part aspect just as much as your responsibility and role aspect.
Yeah.
If not more.
And then we finished off by looking at some practical ways to build these habits. So if you're not already conscientiously working on habits or a habit, I highly encourage y'all to pick one. What is the number one habit that is going to bring you the most good to your life, that is going to help you optimize your life, that's going to bring you the most energy, the most joy, whatever. Or double down what you are working on.
Yeah. For me, I'm setting that sleep schedule, since we talked a little bit about that.
Hell
It's
yeah.
going to give me the energy to get through work, be able to be more patient because I'll be more rested and aware of. So it's just going to lead to a lot of good things.
Yeah.
Possibilities are endless.
Hell yeah. I'm excited for you, dude. You'll have to keep me posted. And if you want any tips on A, the sleep schedule, and B, how to increase the quality of sleep, I've received some oh my goodness, lost my train of thought. Like I have gotten some resources in the past and suggestions in the past that really helped me. So, just hit me up where to find me if you so care to. But yeah, for me, I'm scared. But yeah, for me, I'm doubling down on. So this year, I'm working on improving my core because I've been dealing with some back end injuries. So I'm doubling down on going swimming twice a week and doing a core workout 3 times a week. Got a pretty good routine on that. I'm got a pretty good streak going as well. Let's see what we're doing. We'll do a look. I'm 6 weeks of doing 3 core workouts a week.
There you go.
So that little mental reward to myself, but haven't hit the 60 to 90 days yet. So still got to keep going
there, and you're staying consistent, and that's what counts right now.
Yeah.
You keep going for it.
Anyway, thank you everyone for joining in and listening to our conversation on habits today. And as always, we highly encourage you to continue thinking about this stuff and how you can apply it in your own life. If you have any questions on it or why it applies or how you can apply it, hit us up. Send us a message on Facebook or on Insta. We also have a contact sheet on our website, whydadpodcast.com. But yeah, hopefully this fits into your goals to find how to become a better man, a better husband, a better father, yes. Which is why we're here. So from us at Why Dad, continue to like, subscribe, and follow our social platforms and subscribe to our podcast. And we appreciate all the feedback and questions that you bring us. So
yes,
thanks everybody.
It helps us set our goals so we can give you what you want to hear. So.
Oh yeah. Sweet. Until next time.
Alrighty. Thank you, Paul, and thank you all.
All right. Toodles.